Today we see that 5 of the world's largest banks have been hit with record fines. But don't worry, it really isn't that much, and we'll see what the results of that are in just a moment. They've been caught fixing the currency market. You know, there was a Libor scandal, there's been the interest rate scandals, there have been money laundering scandals, and of course there's been fixing of the precious metals market, many other markets that they have rigged. But now, in this particular one, we've got 5 of the world's largest banks will pay fines just under $6 billion for manipulating foreign currency exchanges. Those banks are JPMorgan, Barclays, Citigroup, and RBS. They pled guilty to U.S. criminal charges. The 5th bank, UBS, a Swiss bank, will plead guilty to rigging benchmark interest rates. And of course, this relates back to the Libor scandal. If you don't remember what Libor is, that is the basis for setting interest rates for home loans, for consumer loans, for business loans. If you've got a variable rate mortgage, that's the way they adjust your variable rate mortgage. Of course, they were playing these spreads and they've been caught playing that. And in this particular case, UBS was singled out for different treatment because they already reached a negotiated settlement just 10 months ago. They paid a small fine and they promised not to do it anymore, and they went back and did it again. Sounds very much like HSBC's money laundering for terrorists and drug cartels, doesn't it? They were put on super secret probation. They did it again. But of course, the Justice Department said it doesn't serve anybody's interest to send any of these bankers to prison, prompting many people to say, of course, they're too big to jail, just like they're too big to fail. Barclays is also sacking 8 employees. I guess that's really tough. They actually fired a few of these people. That's a first. Nobody ever goes to jail, but now we've had 8 employees that get fired. Now, this is what they were doing for 5 years. From 2007, currency traders used a private electronic chat room to manipulate exchange rates. Between 2008 and 2012, several traders formed a cartel, and they used chat rooms to manipulate prices in their favor. Now, here's some of the other markets that they have manipulated. Barclays is also being investigated in the UK over its Qatari fundraising during the financial crisis. Remember that financial crisis when we bailed them out? And in America, over operation of a dark pool electronic trading business. In addition to that, there's also investigations going into them manipulating the energy markets in California and the gold and precious metal markets in the United States. And one person here says, well, it looks like the major global banks are going to face many more, quote, "we deeply regret this behavior," unquote, days ahead. In other words, mistakes were made. We really regret it, but of course, nobody's going to pay for it. Now, here's the kicker. Even though they got record fines, we can see that the stock shares actually went up today because these fines were not nearly that big. They're not really going to impact them whatsoever. They're not punitive fines by any means whatsoever. They say the fines are much lower than expected. So we see that Barclays went up 3.4%, RBS rose 1.8% in one day. So the market is ecstatic. They got away with the crimes. They say no retroactive massive Libor fine for Barclays either. That's a big positive. Take a look at what this Libor scandal looks like. Pull up this graphic here, and you can see this is mapped out by the Wall Street Journal. And as you roll over it, it's an interactive map, and as you roll over it, you can see the different names. And look at that tangled web of conspiracy. Oh, that's the conspiracy word, isn't it? You know, that's when one or more people get together and plot to do something illegal. The banks are the biggest conspirators in the world, and they consistently get away with it. Now, I also thought it was very ironic that at the same time this is being released, about $6 billion worth of fines for these 5 banks for rigging interest rate markets, among other things, everybody was on pins and needles waiting to see what the minutes were going to say from the latest Federal Reserve meetings, whether or not they were going to manipulate interest rates, just like these banks are doing. So these banks can do it. And when they send money to drug cartels, to terrorist groups, they get a small slap on the wrist. Nobody goes to jail. The small guys are consistently having their life savings confiscated in the name of civil asset forfeiture, even though they're not even engaged in a crime, just because they're, quote unquote, structuring deposits, not depositing, filling out the paperwork properly for the banks. They get their entire life savings confiscated. The large banks pay a very small fine, and then the Federal Reserve, the private central bank that is manipulating openly the economy, everybody just hangs on pins and needles to see if they're going to raise interest rates. Of course, they're not going to raise interest rates. They said that in these minutes. We've seen over and over again how the central banks around the world are wringing their hands and saying the economies are dead. Nothing is bringing them back. Quantitative easing isn't working. Zero interest rates aren't working. We're going to have to force people to take away any remaining savings that they've got and spend them using negative interest rates. And oh, by the way, we can also then outlaw cash at the same time.
Another major health threat, this one in Toledo, Ohio, where everybody in the entire city has been told not to drink the water.
Ohio's governor declaring a state of emergency.
Did you know that the average person uses about 80 to 100 gallons of water at home every single day? If there's a water emergency, will you be prepared?
Panicked residents forming long lines throughout the day.
We're here at a supermarket in Toledo. You can see the shelves empty where water once was.
To stay safe and healthy during a crisis, you must have access to safe, clean water. Water which will not be available at your local grocery store.
There's a mad dash on right now to stock up on supplies.
The ProPure Pro 1 G2.0 water filtration system is a must-have for every modern, independently minded household. Protect your family's safety during an emergency. Go to InfoWarsStore.com today to purchase your ProPure Pro 1 G2.0 water filtration system or call 1-888-253-3139.